We stayed in a house near the coast with the house owners, a couple without sons. We were 4 kids, my parents, my grandparents, and my uncles. We remained there for a while. My father and my uncle used to fish, and my mother used to sell that fish door to door. There, my brother started to walk. We used some canes to build him a structure to hold him, and we teach him how to walk. I remember the day we left Marbella for Malaga. The road was full of people and lots of animals carrying the few belongings that the people managed to take with them. Good morning, I'm Pep, and this is the Spanish Civil War. In this channel, and for the next years, we will follow the Spanish Civil War week by week with its battles and the Holocaust that it provoked. Last week, we talked about the Francoist naval blockade and some skirmishes in the waters of the Cantabric Sea. The temperature on the international stage warmed up by a crisis between Germany and France and growing British mistrust toward the fascist regimes. We covered also the third battle for the A Coruña road, and this time Francoist forces have managed to reach the road at its kilometer number 13 as the Republican front crumbled. Even though it seems by the end of the last week that Orgaz offensive was running out of steam. And we'll see this week how it progresses. And we'll also see a new operation that was brewing in Queipo de Llanos mine and that will start this week. So let's go to the fray. And we will start with the battle that we've been covering for the last 3 weeks, the third battle for the A Coruña road. The advances of the past 2 weeks had been substantial, as have the losses in each side. The combination of planes, artillery, tanks, and waves of infantry shattered the Republican lines, and the defending brigades became isolated. As we said last week, for historians like Reverte, the capital had not been in such danger since mid-November. Even though, by the end of last weekend, it seemed as if the Francoist forces had no more reserves to throw in. The 11th of January this week, according to Thomas, the recently arrived 14th and 12th International Brigades will be launched to counter the attack in the areas of Majadahonda and Las Rozas. During the coming days, the Republican forces, with the support of Pablo's T-26, will attack under a dense fog and cold the rebel positions along the A Coruña road. By the 13th, the Russian journalist Kolstov will say, "We've been attacking for 2 days. We've got a wealth of means, but for the time being the results are very disappointing." The battle will carry on until the 15th, when both sides will start to entrench. This third battle of the A Coruña road is considered to be another Republican defensive victory. That cost between 6,000 and 15,000 lives. Even though these continuous and successful offensives, one after the other, show clearly that the initiative in the center is in Francoist hands. Also, as said, this time the Francoists managed to reach the road, endangering the situation for the capital. Among the more pro-Francoist historians, the narrative about the battle says that Orgaz managed to achieve his objectives and he was not planning to isolate the Guadarrama sector nor to envelop the city from the north. He just wanted to ease the situation for the troops inside the university city. Though these historians must admit that nevertheless, Orgaz had already used all his reserves, so he had nothing else to throw in. But this is not the only thing happening in the center during this week. Back in autumn, after a long battle, Siguenza, at the north of the capital, fell into the hands of the Francoists. In recent weeks, the Republicans launched an operation in order to recapture the city and made some progress at the beginning. But last week, the Republican High Command started to withdraw troops from that sector in order to stop the Francoists that were attacking the A Coruña road. Well, taking advantage of that, General Moscardó, you may remember him from the Alcázar, will launch a counter-offensive in the area, recapturing Algora by the 10th, and by the end of this week, the 17th, Renales and Albandés. The failure of the operation to retake Siguenza can be easily linked to the third battle of the A Coruña road, that we've just wrapped up. And with this battle behind us, we have to head towards the south of Spain. We already said last week that Queipo de Llano, with the arrival of Italian reinforcement in his area, was planning to seize Malaga. That, as you may see, finds itself in a salient deep inside rebel territory, almost isolated from the rest of the Republic. We said also last week that a bombardment took place that we could consider as the prelude to this operation. Thomas says that this operation started the 17th, by the end of the week, but the Francoists had already started their movement toward Malaga earlier, because the 14th they will seize Estepona, after some bombardments. The militias defending the city will retreat towards Jurique and Genalguacil. The photo you see right now is an actual photo of the Canarias bombing Estepona. By the next day, the 15th, as 3,000 black shirts and 1,500 technicians that left Italy a couple of weeks ago reached Spain to bolster Queipo's attack, Martínez Monge, chief of the Loyalist Army of the South, will reach San Pedro de Alcántara, just to be welcomed by the shells of the Canarias and the Almirante Cervera. By the end of the day, the Loyalist defenders will flee the town. Nevertheless, Queipo had surrounded the village in order to prevent the militias from fleeing. Again, a Francoist offensive is shattering the enemy defenses. Martínez Monge will say later about the fall of San Pedro de Alcántara that the militias abandoned their positions without even waiting for the enemy infantry to begin their assault. The Francoist advance under Francisco de Borbón, cousin of Alfonso XIII and member of Sanjurjo's coup of 1932, you can see his photo, does not stop there. By the end of the week, we will see the first big prize of the campaign. Maybe that's why Thomas says that the campaign started the 17th, as these days Marbella will fall into nationalist hands. We've started our episode with the witness of Maria Guerra López, a war refugee that was staying in Marbella with her family, and that again, this week, had to pack the few belongings they had to escape yet another time from the Francoist advance. And this advance in the south does not climb only Marbella. Another Francoist column, part of Granada's garrison, and Antonio Muñoz, will capture Alhama that same day. This new campaign in the south does not come without its bombardments. The 12th of January, Almería, after being bombed last week, again suffers the terror from the skies, being bombed 3 times. The 11th, before their job helping the nationalists advance against Estepona and San Pedro, the Canarias and the Almirante Cervera will shell the port of Malaga, that will also suffer an aerial bombardment the 16th. And even if not in the same area, Valencia will have the honor of being shelled this week, with some people being wounded at the Nazareth beach. And switching guns for pens, we'll jump now towards the international sphere, where the difficulties regarding the Spanish case are making international tensions rise. After last week's crisis between France and Germany and Eden's failure in getting parliamentary support in order to stop the German and Italian intervention, this week it turns out that a blockade of Spain is too costly for the Royal Navy, so the British government will send at the beginning of this week an international proposition to stop the arrival of war material and armed tourists, in Winston Churchill's words, to Spain. Although we could say that the chance to finally do something regarding the Spanish situation was lost again. This withdrawal of the Royal Navy from the scenario did not ease the situation at all. Some Germans like Ernest von Weizsäcker would think that the best Germany could do would be to abandon this costly Spanish adventure. Costly in economic terms, but even more in diplomatic terms. The 16th, Goering will declare that Germany will never accept a Red Spain, and the Nazi government will close the Kiel Canal to any warship. In fact, Mussolini and Hitler are weighing the implications of their intervention in Spain among rising international tensions. This week, Mario Roata will report to Rome that Sperl, commander of the Legion Condor, is pessimistic about the Legion's capabilities as well as the ones of the Francoist Forces. Roata personally believes that Hitler is afraid to provoke France too early, and that's why he continues with a piecemeal intervention in Spain. And of course, this pisses off the Italians that have been requesting more German interventions since late 1936. On the other side of the Atlantic, we talked last week about Congress passing 2 resolutions to forbid any kind of weapon export towards Spain. a measure we've said considered by some congressmen as an act of false neutrality. We talked also about the first group of American volunteers reaching Spain, and they might well be the last ones, as these weeks, from the 11th of January, USA passports won't be valid for travel to Spain. Before leaving the international sphere for the rearguard, we would like to mention that this week a commercial agreement will be signed between the French and the Spanish republics. We've said that since the beginning of the conflict, France was very supportive towards the Republic, but not all of France. The Popular Front that was ruling the country had serious opposition that had its climax in 1934, not to mention that fascism had its origin in France, and if the Popular Front that was ruling France were to disappear from the scenario, a right-wing government could threaten the relations between the two countries. So, Spain's fate remains linked to the great powers' internal problems. Now, going back to the rearguard, we would like to mention this week the daunting task undertaken by the Republic in terms of education for its population. A task that started back in 1931 and that will continue during the war with all the difficulties linked to the situation. We'll have the chance to talk about this later on, but we wanted to make a brief mention as this week, behind the Republican lines in Valencia, the Children's Week took place, organized by the Education Minister. But not only in terms of education or gender or even political reforms. I've got now in mind Federica Montseny, a woman, anarchist and minister. The Republic had shown its will to become a modern and democratic state. This week, Republican Spain will legalize abortion, something unbelievable in Francoist Spain, even though we know that abortion has always been there in every society, a crime just for the ones that were not able to pay enough to hide it. Francoist Spain will see also an important law by decree this week. This law, with the signature of Francisco Franco on it, will create the Central Commission for the Administration of the Goods Seized by the Spanish state. This commission will be tasked with the seizure of goods in national Spain that belong to any organization or person that by omission or by their actions did not help the Francoist cause. With this law, a legal frame is created for the Francoist exploitation. As said at the beginning of our series, there's an interesting book about Franco's wealth. If we are able, we'll make a special episode about it. And with this note, we reach the end of the week, with the closure of the third battle for the A Coruña road, and with the international tensions brewing as thousands of Italian troops reach Spain to take part in the recently started campaign for Malaga. To see what comes next, join us in a couple of weeks. Here you've got the link to a very interesting episode by Time Ghost Army that covers France's political turmoil during the 30s. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe. If you enjoyed it, share it. We have to bring light to the history of Spain. If you are able to support us in our Patreon channel, as these heroes already did, or offer us a coffee, this would also be great and would help us to carry on and improve the project. This week we would like to welcome our latest patron, Wells Toro. Let's make this possible together. Thanks for your attention, goodbye, and salute.